For 20 years, my parents lived a lie that was whispered only when the doorbell rang. To the world, they were high society philanthropists running a nationally celebrated foundation for underprivileged children, gracing magazine covers, chairing charity galas, and preaching moral perfection. But inside our pristine home, hidden behind a deadbolt door disguised behind the basement pantry, lived the sister they refused to acknowledge. Whenever guests arrived, she was locked away so her nonverbal autism wouldn't tarnish their curated image. I spent my youth forced into silence, conditioned to protect their empire. But when national television booked an exclusive, live primetime broadcast to honor my parents with a Lifetime Achievement Award, I decided the charade was over. I didn't shout. I didn't cause a scene at home. Instead, I smuggled the truth onto live television and handed 50 million viewers the unedited reality. My name is Hannah Vance. I am 28 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I was groomed to be the presentable daughter. To the outside world, my parents, Richard and Eleanor Vance, were paragons of high society virtue. They founded the Vance Youth Initiative, an acclaimed nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting underprivileged children. Their portraits hung in country clubs, university halls, and the marble foyer of our four-story suburban home. If you looked at the framed silver photographs lining our grand staircase, you would see a picture-perfect family of three: my father in his tailored suits, my mother draped in pearls, and me, smiling dutifully on cue. The world thought I was an only child. But behind the heavy oak door of our basement pantry was a second, concealed entrance, secured with an industrial brass deadbolt. Inside that windowless, converted lower suite lived my younger sister, Maya. Maya was 22 years old, nonverbal, and severely autistic. When she was diagnosed at age 3, my mother broke down, not from sorrow, but from acute social embarrassment. In my parents' hyper-competitive social circle, perfection was currency. A daughter who communicated through rhythmic hand-flapping and vocal stims was, in their words, a liability that would destroy our family's standing. So, they made her vanish. Whenever dinner guests, donors, or reporters arrived, Maya was ushered downstairs and locked away. I was instructed to tell classmates she was away at an exclusive Swiss boarding school. I spent my childhood sneaking down to Maya's room after midnight, reading her picture books and teaching her to paint with watercolors under the dim glow of a desk lamp. For years, I kept quiet because I felt powerless. But after earning my degree in digital media and securing a steady job as an archivist and broadcast technician, the guilt became unbearable. Maya didn't need to be hidden. She needed care, sunlight, and a voice. That was when I decided to stop protecting my parents' curated lie. Living as a silent accomplice tore at my conscience every single day. I couldn't simply kick open the door and walk away with Maya. Legally, my parents were her court-appointed guardians, and they possessed the money, the legal power, and the social clout to crush any accusation I made. If I wanted to liberate my sister and guarantee her safety permanently, I needed undeniable, airtight evidence. I began my quiet investigation on a Tuesday night while my parents attended an exclusive private foundation gala. Utilizing the administrative access I maintained on the household network, I began combing through our family's trust and tax records. What I discovered turned my blood cold. For 12 straight years, Richard and Eleanor had systematically claimed top-tier state disability subsidies, specialized healthcare allowances, and even private donor grants in Maya's name, totaling over $1.4 million. Every grant proposal cited comprehensive home therapy, full-time certified speech pathologists, and advanced sensory enrichment programs. In reality, Maya had not seen a licensed physician or specialist in nearly 7 years. Not a single dollar of that funding had gone toward her developmental care. Instead, forensic expenditure logs revealed the funds had been routed directly into offshore accounts to cover my mother's designer wardrobe, country club memberships, and father's luxury sports cars. They were treating my sister as a tax-exempt piggy bank while locking her beneath the floorboards. I partnered quietly with Arthur Bennett, a retired family attorney specializing in disability rights and adult guardianship. Over 6 meticulous weeks, we documented every piece of physical proof: the locked pantry latch, Maya's windowless room, medical neglect logs, and authenticated banking statements. Then came the spark. The National Broadcast Network announced a live primetime special to award my parents the National Philanthropy and Family Legacy Award. Eleanor handed me a formal dress, demanding I sit front row on live television to smile as the loving daughter. They thought it would be their ultimate public coronation. Instead, they had handed me the perfect stage. The night of the broadcast arrived with the mechanical precision of a multi-million-dollar production. The Grand Plaza studio in Manhattan was packed to capacity with 500 high-profile donors, corporate sponsors, politicians, and media executives. Outside, satellite broadcast vans lined the block, beaming the feed live to an estimated 50 million viewers across the country. My parents were in their absolute element. My mother, Eleanor, wore an emerald evening gown, her diamond necklace sparkling under the harsh studio lighting as she accepted congratulations from network executives. My father, Richard, held a champagne flute, charming the show's executive producer with rehearsed anecdotes about the selflessness required to run a premier charitable organization. Back at our suburban estate, Maya remained locked in the basement, watched over by a temporary aide who had been paid $500 cash simply to keep the door shut until midnight. Because of my background as an archivist and broadcast technician, my mother had arranged a production credential lanyard for me so I could coordinate our family's digital tribute montage. That press badge was the only key I needed. 20 minutes before airtime, while the production crew was distracted running sound checks on the host's lavalier microphone, I slipped into Master Control Room B. The environment was an overwhelming wall of glowing monitors, patch bays, and audio faders. The lead media playback operator was momentarily away from his station grabbing black coffee. My hands were steady, my breathing slow and measured. I walked up to the primary media server labeled Tribute Reels, Live Air. With quick, practiced keystrokes, I pulled the pre-rendered promotional video, a glossy, sentimental package titled The Vance Family, a portrait of devotion, and replaced it with an identical file name containing my authenticated media package from an encrypted USB drive. At exactly 8 o'clock, the stage manager held up 5 fingers, counting down silently. The red on-air tally lights clicked on across 5 studio cameras. The veteran anchor took center stage with a warm, practiced smile. Tonight, we honor 2 individuals whose unwavering family values and devotion to children have inspired a generation. Let's look at the quiet sacrifices of Richard and Eleanor Vance. The lights in the studio dimmed, and the playback monitors flickered to life. Instead of the polished, orchestral tribute reel my parents expected, the massive studio jumbotrons flickered to raw, high-definition handheld footage. The entire auditorium went dead silent as the screen displayed a narrow, windowless room beneath our house. The camera slowly panned over a heavy pantry door fitted with an industrial deadbolt, the faint sound of rhythmic tapping echoing through the studio speakers. Then came Maya, 22 years old, sitting quietly on an unmade cot under harsh fluorescent bulbs, painting with cheap watercolors. The video cut immediately to certified document scans, 12 consecutive years of state disability subsidies, private foundation grant approvals, and forensic audit trails highlighting $1.4 million diverted into luxury car dealerships and private offshore accounts. On stage, my mother's rehearsed smile vanished, replaced by sheer, petrified horror. My father shot out of his chair, waving frantic hands toward the director's booth, his voice carrying off-mic across the auditorium. "Cut the feed. Turn off the screens right now." The control room was completely frozen. Network producers scrambled, unsure whether this was an intentional avant-garde segment or a catastrophic broadcast breach, leaving the live national feed rolling across 50 million screens. The seasoned anchors stared at the monitors, completely speechless. Seizing the absolute vacuum in the room, I stepped out from the front row and walked calmly up the stage stairs. I stopped directly in front of the main guest podium, adjusted the microphone, and looked straight into the red light lens of camera one. "My name is Hannah Vance," I said, my voice steady, clear, and quiet against the stunned silence of the room. "The philanthropists you are honoring tonight have built a celebrated legacy preaching love, family ethics, and compassion for neglected children. But for nearly 2 decades, they have kept their second biological daughter, Maya Vance, imprisoned in a locked basement because her autism was deemed a threat to their social standing. Gasps rippled across the live studio audience. High-profile donors clutched their chests, and network executives frantically whispered into headsets. My mother tried to grab my arm, whispering through clenched teeth, "Hannah, you ungrateful wretch, shut up." I didn't flinch. I turned to face her, pulling a thick, notarized manila envelope from beneath my jacket. This contains 12 years of misallocated state disability funds, unredacted bank records, and medical neglect reports. The police and adult protective services are at the house right now. The teleprompters went dark. The silence in the room was absolute. The fallout was swift, undeniable, and complete. Within 48 hours of the broadcast, the Vance Youth Initiative's board of directors voted unanimously to dissolve the foundation. Every corporate sponsor withdrew their funding, and state authorities launched a formal investigation into grant fraud and elder-independent adult neglect. Richard and Eleanor's reputations, built meticulously over 3 decades of performative philanthropy, vanished overnight. They were stripped of their awards, ostracized by their peers, and forced to liquidate the suburban mansion to pay back restitution and legal penalties. With the irrefutable evidence Arthur Bennett and I had compiled, the family court granted an emergency petition revoking my parents' guardianship. I was awarded full, permanent legal conservatorship over Maya. Using what was left of our grandmother's modest educational trust, I purchased a sunlit, single-story craftsman cottage in a quiet coastal town 3 hours away from the city. There are no deadbolts here, no concealed stairwells, and no expectations of curated perfection. Today, Maya has a dedicated team of compassionate speech pathologists, sensory occupational therapists, and art instructors. For the first time in her life, she walks freely through the front door whenever she wants. On Saturday mornings, we sit together on our back porch overlooking the garden. Maya hums softly, her hands moving with joyful purpose across a large canvas of bright yellow sunflowers, the warm morning sun resting gently on her face. My parents spent 20 years hiding her away, believing her differences made our family weak. But looking at her now, happy, safe, and truly free, I know the truth. Maya wasn't the flaw in our family, she was the only real thing in it. And that is something no locked door could ever erase.